good to see you again. It's a fresh new week.
It's
week
beautiful.
getting started.
What a wonderful time. What a beautiful day to be alive.
Yesterday was the Super Bowl. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
Yeah. You know, I'm really not that big into sports.
Yeah. I'm not super into
no
sports.
offense to anyone that is into sports. You know, my family wasn't into sports, and I was always in a world of imagination. Never really, you know, when you're running in circles of people playing Magic the Gathering and stuff, there's a chance that you're not playing with football people.
No, that's true. I mean,
I think there's a lot of crossover. I think there's a lot of crossover because like nerd culture is really about being interested in things. And I really think sports fits.
I think when I saw at some point, it was a meme that kind of said that fantasy football is Dungeons and Dragons for like football nerds or something like that. It was something along those lines. And I was just like, that caught me in the thought. And I was like, you know?
It is. I mean, it's like tabletop gaming. You're like doing notes.
Yeah, and I'm like, they're looking at stats. Yeah, they're trying to get the best player to do stuff. I was like, no, yeah. If you just did the art different, had like Pokemon cards of the different players with their stats on it, like, well, bro, it's way more involved than like the games I play. The stats are way more. That's true. Because the like people that are playing, people that are playing like fantasy league stuff and doing it at the highest level, I know are employing. At this point, they got to be doing AI and also Excel spreadsheets. You know, before it might have just been crazy formula spreadsheets, but yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, if you went deep enough into Reddit, you'd be finding people doing that for any video game out there.
Yeah, no, no doubt it. Man, we were watching
to get that Elden Ring.
Exactly, I was thinking of that. We were watching some fun Elden Ring videos that were just making me think of that, and also just people will take things crazy depths because I don't know if you've ever like watched people do like speed runs of anything.
Oh yeah,
like speed runners and like, or one thing that also that kind of makes me think of Geoguesser. Have you ever seen people do Geoguesser stuff? Yo, so
I played that game. It's fun.
I thought about wanting to play it. Like, just that's such a weird sentence to say. I have thought about playing it because I want to play it. Is the sentence that I wanted to say, but it's just like one of those things I just never get around to. But watching people do it, I remember thinking like, what's going on? Like, and I remember watching like an interview where this guy was kind of like one of the world's best Geoguesser dudes talking about like how they do it. And he's like, we are spending all day in the Geoguesser Discord talking about bollards, talking about street lines, talking about asphalt mixes, gravel color, dirt color. And he's just like, you know, and your brain doesn't even, you don't even have the imagination to think to that level, you know, when you're like, how's he so good at guessing stuff? You know, and he's talking about like, oh, in this place, bollards have 2 vertical lines. In this place, they only have 1. You know, and they're just like, oh, you know?
Yeah. When you hear them say the justification for their guess, it's pretty cool. Like,
yeah, no, it's way cool.
Details.
It's very interesting. It is. What you been? Oh, so I brought up Super Bowl only because.
Did you watch the? Did you watch you must have. I saw you were playing Dungeon Degenerate.
There you go. I was gonna say, I mean, it was on a television. There was cursory glances. I had, we were laughing because I was playing with the normal crew. We play on Sundays, and some of my family members came over and they were watching the game upstairs. And my cousin has a very animated voice. He's very animated, you know. So when something exciting happens, you know, he's gonna exclaim excitement. And so we were laughing how we could play the game and all we had to do is listen for my cousins to scream to echo off of the downstairs thing. And then we just look up and oh dang, because they were like at a 1 second delay ahead of us. So it worked out in this funny way, but still. So I mean, we was glad to that. I didn't give it the full watch, which is normally kind of what tradition is.
I mean, like the mushrooms in all the swamps got cursed. So like
Yeah, that was,
you
and
can't let
see,
your attention
that was what's going on with when
stray.
it comes down to it. The Dungeon Degenerates, like Super Bowl is definitely cool. I've slowly kind of like eased out of being, I mean, the only kind of sports that I like kind of watch now. I want to get back into sumo, and I'll get into why, but probably just, and it's not even like watching sports, it's just like watching either like edits of the fight. You know, like I don't ever watch anything live. It's like something happens and then I sort of hear something about it on social media and try to avoid as much spoilers as I can. But even then, when it comes to like a fight, it's not like I'm not invested. And then at the same time, if I know who wins, it's like, it doesn't really spoil my enjoyment, really, you know, because for me, what I do enjoy about viewing it is like the technical exchanges and skill displays of athletes, not necessarily like these moments of like just a dude getting rocked or something like that. So for me to watch it, it's easy because I can just be like, YouTube something. It's some guys out there chop screwing the footage, slowing it down, shifting it so the bots can't catch them, and you know, all this weird stuff, muting audio and things like that. It's like, oh cool, oh man, got him caught, you know. Just watch it sort of catch up for my own, just to sort of be like, just, you know, cashing it. Okay, yeah, that's what happened, you know. But the one thing that I think, like I said, I want to get back into it, but I randomly got into sumo wrestling, and while watching sumo and sort of like learning about it, I got hit with a couple of things which I thought were like really interesting. The first one is sumo as a spectator sport and also a sport is like one of the absolute like cleanest, most thought out, like logically applied like sports with rules that I've ever seen. Like because the whole point, even considering like an comparison to like combat sports like MMA or something, where it's like two guys get in the ring and one guy gets out. Like in MMA they have, or excuse me, in sumo they've got all these different rules. It's really just who touches the floor first. If you touch the doyo with any part of your body but your feet, you lose. So it's a simple premise, but it's very difficult when the dude's 400 pounds and smacking you in your throat. And there's all these rules. They have 4 judges on each side that are like super elder sumo wrestlers themselves. And they also have the cameras. And there's just like no bullshit when it comes to like who won, how, and even if they can use the cameras to like go down to millisecond to be like, oh, so and so actually won, because the whole point of the contest is to find like it's a display of skill, definitive winners. They'll be like rematch. Like, you gotta actually win. Like, it's not about this technicality. Ooh, we can.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, no, display that you can win. So there's just tons of rules in sumo that when you get your head around them, you're like, man, that makes so much sense. And there's also a ton that don't. You're just like, what? There's a whole bunch of strange stuff too. But the second thing is, based on all of those observations of like rules and fighting, I swear in some way, shape, or form that the fighting game genre on video games, at all, like Street Fighter, the first fighting games that came, at least they came out of Japan, you know, the ones that became legendary, if they were not like, that came from sumo. Like, that came from them watching sumo and then being like, oh, you know, and make a fun game, a game where you fight. Like, and with rules, these rules like ring outs and like health bars and combos and all these things, and like it just, all that stuff started clicking in my head, and I was just like, man, no wonder sumo's like absolutely legendary, you know. Jeez. Speaking of legendary though, then this is a little segue. I am holding a sprue for the new Corn Berserkers kit which I have the original White Dwarf. I think it's from like 98. It says like on the cover, Corn Berserkers, like ready yourself, you know, and it's got like sprues and the features of people doing like conversions and stuff of the brand new Corn Berserkers kit, which stayed the brand new Corn Berserkers kit for like 23 years.
Yeah.
25 years and shit until just last week. And I'm super stoked that they look like Corn Berserkers, but then they just fixed the scale. They're like, oh, cool, let's just apply the scale.
Yeah, just update.
Yeah. They're not like Corneris Corn Berserkers that just are bigger and stronger because Corn's like more mad at them or something.
Right.
You know, they're just better. The Corneris Berserkers, you know, we just accept it. You know, what are you working on? Because I'm going to be building this guy because tomorrow, at the time of recording, is Valentine's Day. And I'm going to be doing like a Valentine's Day stream where I'm going to be painting a corn. Kidding? Yeah. No, I'm not kidding.
So romantic.
It's very romantic. I'm doing a Corn Berserker paint giveaway on the stream, and I have this envision of like painting him in this like almost like pink hue, red bloody thing, and I want him to be like a bloody Corn Lovezerker guy. I'm still like wrestling with it in my mind, but like pink and heart and blood and Valentine and gore and corn. It's like all a theme.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, you know, I'm kind of I'm off to a rocky start for it, but Matt Lechtenberg is building a relic blade table that's got
I haven't seen it yet.
Deep themed things. It's got like gilblins and mud holes and stuff. And he mentioned that it'd be cool to have like a idol statue, kind of Cthulhu-esque idol of a deep character.
You need it
to add to it. And so I'm kind of fiddling around in ZBrush trying to figure out what it looks like, but I think I'm running into a problem that I didn't do any sketches. So I don't actually have any idea.
So the brain is like, what shape exactly?
Yeah, I've got only the vaguest idea, so
is that
going to get anywhere with it?
That's an important part of your process? Yeah, that the sketching sort of visualization.
Yeah, unless I've already spent a bunch of time imagining it.
Yeah,
which I haven't.
Do you ever get like inspired from like? Yeah, actually, I already know the answer to this, but like from seeing something specifically, like a shape or a thing in a movie or a thing that like a prop maker made or something of that nature.
Sorta, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's happened for sure.
And you're like, ooh, I'm pretty much just want to do that, except maybe.
Yeah, that's not the main way. It's usually more like that gets added as an ingredient to a stew that I've been like kind of
like
fiddling around with. Yeah.
Like that, seeing that complete form in that other artist is like maybe like makes just something click a little bit more in your mind.
Yeah.
I feel that. Yeah, I shared that.
Usually I don't see something and just like say, oh, that's what I want. But it's probably happened. Like there was a cool mask that inspired the Dark Wanderer head, but at the same time it's a beast skull, so it's not like
But yeah, that's a good example.
And then at the same time, the Dark Wanderer like is also, you know, a little bit like Skeletor, a little bit like Mun-Ra, a little bit like actual beast skull. So that sort of like hybridizing stuff happens. But with this one, we were thinking about like a Cthulhu statue, and so maybe I should just pull up
some Cthulhu statues. That reminds me too.
At least like get an idea of what the stand and stuff is supposed to.
Yeah, I feel it. That reminds me too of yesterday. I sent you that picture of that like warrior woman, and this is like a throwback to Relicbuds episode 1. But Savage is still. I'm still daydreaming about that a lot and adding to the world and that sort of stuff and coalescing those ideas in my mind. And thinking about it. And it's transformed as well into a sort of bigger project in my mind, but not at the same time, not really just like me trying to understand it and the world building and all the foundations for all these things, not necessarily stuff that's in like the scope of the game, just for like, as we're talking about how those like processes that help you understand. For me, imagining all sorts of strange things that have nothing to do with the game help me inform decisions and stuff that I'm trying to make about it. And I saw I was having a discussion with a friend about like the depiction of like strong women in fantasy, and how it's typically, how historically, because of demographics and stuff like that, very male gaze oriented, very damsel style oriented, very like prize oriented. It was usually all these depictions and stuff. And I was kind of thinking about what if I could have like free reign to have an artist like draw sort of depictions of strong female warriors, or just women in general, like what that would kind of be, specifically pertaining to my ideas of savage, and like kind of like what kind of things that they might wear or look like, and even down to the weird stuff like musculature or skin tone and things like that. And so I shared a picture with Sean, and I'll try to throw it up here too. That just was like just a mood piece where I was like, yeah, that makes me think about it. You know, it makes me want to seek out stuff that's kind of similar to that and explore that theme a little bit more.
That reminds me of a anecdote, because I think about that sort of stuff a lot. Like, I'd like to be able to depict different body types, and particularly like heroic women, because Hollywood really has, they're making some progress, but they're still like really limited in,
it's still safe. Like, they're still playing safe
heroes. I mean, not even just women heroes, but like men heroes. You know? Like there's like a body type that they do now. You know? And if people aren't that body type, then they like CGI it or whatever, or make them go to the gym and get someone that's like approximate.
Pay them crazy money to get them go to the gym.
But yeah, every once in a while, like see a woman at the gym and be like, oh man, if I could get her to model, just like do some sketches, it would help so much. I remember one time I went to like FedEx or something, and there was like a tattooed girl working there, and I was like, oh, she looks badass. And I was like, I tried to talk to her. I was like, hey, I'm a comic book artist. This is an actual comic book that I drew. I'm interested in trying to like draw badass women. Would you be willing to let me take a picture of you as like a reference? And like, she was skeptical, and then her boss came over and like kicked me out of the store. It's like, okay.
Oh man. Like, yeah, it's like, I give you kudos for trying, because fuck, I sure wouldn't have. I would have been like,
no,
man.
I know. I don't think I've tried since.
I mean, who could blame you? You know, you're like, this is, you don't understand. I guess I'll just imagine more.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so, you know, sometimes artists get a hard time for drawing people the same way, but like, bro, finding stuff
that truly actually looks different. And that's when people talk about it, representation doesn't matter. That's how you know that they don't understand that they're already represented. And that those things in their heads are already being represented, so they don't know what are you talking about. You know, and so these ideas of like body type and different depictions of, you know, just of different like what's this, I'm losing words, but just like different depictions of beauty standards and things like that. Like I remember there was a Nicolas Cage movie called Mandy. It came out like maybe 2020, 2000. No, actually this was pre-pandemic, so it had to be like 2018, 2017 or something like that. Did you ever hear about that movie?
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I want to though, because I like.
It was trippy. It was cool. But what stuck with me is the actress for Mandy. Like, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think the director pretty much like took a look at her, and not unlike you approaching the girl with the tattoos, pretty much was like, I like the way you look. Do you want to be in my movie? You know, and like, kudos to him, because she has such a unique look. Like, it's not a typical beauty at all. But I was looking at screen and I was captivated. I was like, this lady just looks, there's something about her. I don't know what it is, but I want to look at her. You know, so it's like the director was on it with something right there, you know. But yeah, without having those sort of references to actually look at or be inspired from, because have you seen what's the second Black Panther movie called?
Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda Forever. Oh, okay. There's, well, I mean, I could say, yeah, it's totally spoiler free. There is an armor design in Wakanda Forever that me and my buddy Zeus were talking about, and it looks weird. It looks kind of odd. Like, it's not 100% there for me personally, but I did recognize when I saw it, and I could be 1000% wrong, but it was just like this thing that happened inside me as I was looking at it, because I looked at it, I recognized that it kind of had like an element of Predator to it, like a silhouette, you could say, like with like a dread and a larger head and stuff like that. But other parts I just couldn't nail, and like the shapes and the design, I just couldn't really nail down, and it looked quite literally like almost alien to me. And that's when it occurred to me, like, I might actually be looking at the designs of someone who's like truly grown up, not thinking about or seeing all the same shit that I have. Like, I'm looking at an actually fresh design from a fresh designer who's got different cultural upbringings and different viewpoints, and he thinks different things look cool. And so there was this part where I was like, I see it, like, but I had to like get used to it almost, because it like didn't strike me immediately as like a typical cool look, you know, I guess is kind of how it was. So yeah, it's kind of that depiction, and, you know, kind of bringing it to the models front too. Like, GW has been putting a lot more female models in their kits. We got plenty of women in the guard. They can get blasted too.
Yeah, perfect.
You know, it's perfect. Yeah, it's equal opportunity blasting in the Imperium, you know. But
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I think about that as a comic book artist who is, I'm white. I grew up in a small town in Northern California that was like mostly European descent people, right? And now I live in Napa, so there's more diversity here, but it's mostly Hispanic and white people. And if I went a little bit to south to like Vallejo, then it's like super diverse, right? Tons of API, tons of African American, you know, all kinds of diversity. But the truth is, like, where I am and where I grew up, I didn't see that many people that looked that different. I've traveled widely, so I know, I have a diverse understanding of the world, but yeah, if I wanted a friend to model for me, like, I've got really limited options. And then I think about artists who like get in trouble for drawing black characters wrong or Asian characters wrong, and it's like, that's an intimidating job for me as and like, so I'd love to add more diversity to Relicblade, but at the same time, like, I don't want to be adding caricatures of an Asian person.
No doubt, for sure. You know, and that's an interesting point too, because you might have saw on like my stories I was just sharing. Well, I remember I was at your spot when I actually saw it. I got that ad for that like Dungeons and Dragons source book called Boricubos. Yeah. And so I shared that with my mom. She bought it for me for Valentine's Day. Surprised me with it yesterday. And I was like, I was like very few times, you know, I guess go on some higher philosophical level type stuff here for just a sec. There's a few times when I interact with something and it's almost as if like it's a feeling of I'm on a right trail. There's like a weird manifestation, a weird like almost confirmation feeling that I get from doing certain things, and those things kind of remind me that I'm on a path. It almost feels like that. But when I was reading that book, I had that feeling where I was like, this is exactly why I saw it and thought about it and shared it with my mom and was inspired to even think about it, because within reading like the first paragraph, I was like unlocked a core memory of this story that one of the pretty much like the first book that I ever read, because I wanted to read at a young age. And I remember being frustrated because I couldn't play Sega games because some of them required that you had to read the menus, like the RPGs and stuff. And I just couldn't read. So I was like, you know, I need to read. So I was starting to pick up books like at a really young age. And one of these early books that I read was this like Puerto Rican, like child's folk story tale about this kid called Juan Bobo. And he just does all these like little things, you know, they're little like nursery rhyme style stories that are meant to teach children stuff. And I read, you know, was reading the foreword from the writer. His name is Miguel Colon of Boricubos. And it was just so cool to like read his words and feel super connected to it. And he was talking about what inspired him and feeling connected to his heritage, and that when he saw, you know, as someone of Afro-Caribbean descent, when he looked into fantasy genre, he was like, there's sometimes pirates,
Right.
you know, and so like this book is a collection of like over 20 authors straight from, you know, South American countries, delivering content that is from the myths of South America. So, you know, like I was like reading it and I was like, oh, I just felt super charged. I was like, yes, this is very cool. I'm very inspired by just the simple fact that it's just that concept of representation. That's why I'm holding this. That's why. And then like coming from Puerto Rican heritage and like having it be set in, it's written by a Puerto Rican dude, and it's the word Boricua is what is used for Puerto Ricans to refer to other Puerto Ricans. And so the term Boricubos being like the island nation for all this fantasy, and they've got different people. It's just really interesting. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to dive in, you know, ready to read.
That's way cool.
And be excited by it, especially for Savage, because for me, Savage takes place in, you know, it doesn't take place on Earth, but it takes place in an area that is pretty much geographically very much like South America, jungle-y and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm very ready to explore fantasy that like goes more places.
Yeah, that's different.
You know,
you know,
like playing Ghosts of Tsushima made me really want to like explore more Japan, but there's also like a cool Mongol myth in there. You know, like, and
the
so
Mongol
that
myth
adds a
is
bunch of
very cool.
stuff.
I gotta be honest.
And but you know, Japan's been explored a bunch, but you know, I've been trying to push Relic Blade characters into like the Near East a little bit. You know, you've got the Warden of Justice and the Akkad goblins and all of that. So I'm excited to try to, you know, explore a lot more diverse stuff. But also, you know, you know, maybe this is not such a fun conversation to talk about like cultural appropriation or whatever, but yeah, for that,
it's a Relicbuds conversation though.
Yeah. For that book to have most of the contributors be, you know, from that background, I think makes such a cool experience. And like being able to have more creators in the entertainment industry is something that's going to keep growing because I think things like Patreon and YouTube make pursuing those types of careers more viable. Whereas, in the past, there's a lot more gatekeeping in that, like, you have to come from a background that you're going to school for art. You have to come from a background that you're able to go and like pursue a job in video games or whatever, or in
or if you want to
writing.
be an
And
actor,
like there's a certain amount
director
of
or
like
two.
privilege that is a prerequisite.
Yeah, it's getting
to
passed up now.
Thinking, oh yeah, I'll just work in entertainment, instead of thinking like I need to, get plugged into a trade right away to be able to make sure my younger brother gets through school.
Yeah.
I think
sort of
so.
more
Anyways,
sociological situations versus.
and there's a lot. Obviously, everyone's lives are really complicated, but it's cool to see with Patreon being able to have, more sculptors from all over the world getting involved in the hobby. And I'm mostly paying attention to sculptors and illustrators, but it's easy to find illustrators from Southeast Asia and from all over the world getting involved in online art making. And so I think for tabletop gaming, we'll be able to see more growth in that diversity and have it be natural, because you don't need a bunch of white guys like me trying to make a Vietnamese story, like we'll leave that to Vietnamese. What I can do is I come from the edge of the Western world on this like savage coast of California, and I've been exposed to like tons of different things. So my lens is unique and interesting enough for people, and so I hope to just be me. But I'm looking forward to seeing more people just be themselves and not feel like they need to be making Wizards of the Coast stories. They can take us to new worlds, or even Tolkien, who when he was making Lord of the Rings was really creating a mythology that felt true to his like
his experience,
English
in his worldview
background, and his worldview, and tying it back to these myths and things. Whereas I think we get to grow off of that, and then as creators have like all these different lenses, because Middle Earth is really true to his background, but he's I don't know 100 years old, and so we've got a lot more people that are inspired by him to create new worlds. So we don't need to just be like trudging through Middle Earth. We can be exploring all kinds of weird stuff.
I'm totally with it. And I mean, it's funny because this conversation, when you talk about kind of like exploring new grounds instead of, sort of returning to this thing that's been around forever, which is pretty much what's been happening in the entertainment sector as, things like the Lord of the Rings Ring of Power is funded and comes out, and it's just like, we're going back to Middle Earth, and there's like, and then there's this whole idea of kind of like, but why? And it's like, well, I understand why. I know, actually, don't answer the question. I know why.
Yeah, please don't.
But it's like,
I'd be offended to hear that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
we know why. And at the same time, that inherently sort of, there's a, like, I remember someone was asking me about how I felt about the show when it was coming out, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure the show's gonna be great. And they're like, oh, you're gonna watch it? Are you excited about it? I'm like, absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. Because for me, I think about the why something's made, and why something's made has a big part of its quality and this passion that goes, kind of into it and stuff. And while, again, shows should be entertaining, because that's what the show should be, right? Yeah. But for me to be sort of be interested in it is kind of from the outgo, it's what is it? And it's like, oh, it's Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, for me, access to Lord of the Rings can come in many different forms. Like, for me, I would rather just go collect some Middle Earth strategy battle game stuff. Like, I don't really, it's like, oh, go watch the Rings of Power. Like, you know, that's fine, because I didn't read the books either, right? So there's, for me, there's different vectors to kind of interact with that IP. So from like the media Hollywood standpoint, I'm like, all right, y'all, like, I'd rather see something a little bit different from y'all. I'm sure it's fine, you know, but I'm not super interested. And last night we were watching The Last of Us, me and my mom, and it was striking me how like funny it was, because The Last of Us, great game. I don't even remember when it came. It came out like 2004 or something. It came out a long time ago. I can't even remember. 2007. I'm gonna keep changing. I'm gonna keep changing. I'm gonna keep changing my answer. 2012. You know, it came out a long time ago, and I played through. Great. You know, great story. One of those games that really reminds you of like the power of like narrative gaming and like putting the player in the perspective of the protagonist and like making you feel stuff, making you make decisions based on like experience versus context or logic, and all these fun things that the game did, that when I was done with the game, that experience like stayed with me. And so watching the show last night and sort of re-experiencing that story with my mom, it was, I enjoy it and I think it's great, but I'm also like kind of just smiling at the fact that like my mom's experience is different than mine, because I'm like, I am looking at it, and for me, since I know the story and I know the characters, as I watch it, it's not necessary. I'm not necessarily looking to be surprised. Like, that's not a part of my viewing experience. Like, I'm gonna go, oh, that's different. Oh, that's cool. They didn't do that in the show. I'll recognize that intuitively. For me, I'm actually kind of just paying attention to detail and seeing like, oh, that is from the show. Like, that's a direct line, or this is a direct nod to a scene, or even like a freaking QTE or something, you know, like a specific stuff. I'm like kind of looking at the in-between gel, because the people who made the show are pretty much the same people who made the game. And it's just, but it's interesting to me that it's like, this isn't new. You know, it's almost like when the Dune movie came out, like maybe that's how like people who have read all 13 of the Dune books were like, oh yeah, no, dude, now y'all talk about Dune? Okay. Like, I'm sure the movie's gonna be cool. I'm gonna go see it, you know. But at the same time, maybe the people who read the books were those people who I was reading stuff being like, wait a minute, a PG-13 rating? That doesn't make any sense. The violence depicted in the first book alone is way more than R. And I remember being like, what book did this guy read? Like, I don't remember anyone getting violent in that book at all. Like, what's going on? You know. And so it's just this like interesting thing where it's cool from a representation perspective. In The Last of Us, it's interesting that Pedro Pascal is playing Joel, because in the game he was depicted by Troy Baker, who I'm not sure where he comes from, but he looked like a white dude, and he would sound like a white dude because the character's from Texas. But Pedro is Latin American, and so they changed little details about like his family to also be like a Latin American actor, and just like make it kind of like fit and stuff like that. And so all of those things are wonderful. They're great. And you know, the actors change and that stuff, but it's from a point of like entertainment story. Even looking at The Last of Us, I was like, my man Pedro Pascal, all they gotta do is like, they just have to have him be Yojimbo next or something, and escort like another baby across ancient Japan with a sword. Nice. You know, like that's the thing. Like, that's how we make a hit right now. Yeah, like he's daddy escort, you know. And so there's these elements of it that, to me, while the quality of the show is excellent, I'm seeing the production stuff, and I'm thinking about like producery shit, and I'm like thinking about like, why is the show being made? And I'm like, executive producer Neil Druckmann. Oh, that's why the show's being made, because the guy who made the game wants to make the show. Oh, okay, because he has the money to do it. Like, that's why the show's being made. And it's not like this is a fresh new story. Oh my god, it's Neil Druckmann's being like, yo, I want to reach a wider audience. So, and I got buku dollars because of the success of what I've done. And I pretty much made a video game movie anyway. Why don't I just try to do some directed stuff? And he's probably directed shit in the past anyway. You know, so You just step into a new role in the same tangential industry, you know? And so it's just like all that stuff makes sense. But then from the perspective of like fresh, new, exciting, that's why I think like bringing it back to our industry, we're like, as of recording right now, we're about 4, maybe 5 weeks past the OGL announcement. Kind of like OGL coming out and Wizards being like, we don't like y'all doing stuff, we changing all these things, and the community just going crazy about it. And this sort of like reaction to big corporate versus small indie, and how like the small indie third party is like doing all this stuff to like kind of like support the big corporate in a sense, and how this whole move kind of showed everybody this I hesitate to say like fragile like support system or something, but it did show like the direction that all this stuff is kind of like positioned, and that a lot of content, you know, creators and third party book writers and all this stuff were potentially in a position to really start thinking about, well, oh shit, like what should we do? Like, should we change this? Should we do something else? Like, and then it was also putting the spotlight on a ton of other shit, like Zweihander and Blackbirds have been shot up to like the Amazon #1 list of books and RPGs for like the past 2 weeks now. And that's just because of all of the eyes being diverted because of just like the moves, the big moves that are being made.
Yeah, I kind of lost. I saw that WotC was like, oh, never mind. But also,
yeah, they pretty much had to walk it back because they were like, oh, you didn't like that.
Has the community moved on? I dropped out of following. It sort of
seems that the fire has kind of died down a little bit. Okay. And the attention has sort of been diverted. But that being said, the new eyes on things like Morkborg and, like I said, like Zweihander and Blackbirds and all these other smaller RPGs, that definitely did like occur, you know, and there was absolutely some fallout with that and people seeing new stuff. And it's sort of in the same way that Hollywood and these shows kind of are bringing out these older stories and things. It just makes me want to look into the indie and find weird stuff, weird things that are just not, you know, dude with brunette hair does action things and saves blonde lady, you know, or something of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for enjoying a show that like a lot of other people are watching.
For sure.
But like, yeah, Sarah and I have been watching Last of Us as it comes out, and part of me is still so bored with zombie shows.
Yeah.
That like I almost don't have patience for it. But at the same time, it's still cool and it's good, and I like the zombie designs, the mushroom head guys.
Yeah, like the cordyceps fungus style.
But like, you know, even the stories, it's like, all right, yeah. Oh, it's the story about like the maniacal new like ruler of a community of survivors. It's like, all right, guys. I don't know. I think it's cool. It's fine. I'm enjoying it, but it definitely isn't blowing my mind. Like did you watch SEEC?
I did not, no.
That one, it trailed off near the end of the season finale, but that show I felt like was way more interesting as far as like a post-apocalyptic story, because
is that the one
the zombie threat wasn't there at all?
Is that the one where people are on like a boat?
No, it's the one where everyone is blind.
Oh, the one with Jason Momoa, Momoa. That one, I I watched. So yeah, I thought it was cool premise, but I was exposed to a couple of scenes just like on some third party stuff, right? And I was just like, everyone's blind, and I was like, I can appreciate the concept of choreographing a battle in which the sides that are fighting are blind, but I'm like, I don't think there doesn't appear to be anyone blind on screen right now. You know, there was I could see the style. I could see like again, the choreograph, the style of it. But I remember just immediately being taken out and just think, I was like, they're supposed to be blind? And I was like,
there was like one scene where they like obviously had a blind actor, and it was just like, that kind of broke.
You guys shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Because I remember just thinking about the way that they were moving and reacting. I was like, I was just thinking about like the Daredevil, Ben Affleck Daredevil. I was like, maybe they got like, maybe that's what's going on. They got like sonar stuff. Because my man's like dodging and he's moving and he's weird. It's supposed to almost look accidental. But you know, but yeah, I do remember that one. And what I do appreciate even just about that show from the get-go, having not watched it, is just that it's and why I think it's cool and want more shows of that nature is because it's a high concept show. And like high concept shows have fallen off cliffs in the face of safe bet show. You know, like they want to do high concept in the safe bet. So we'll have like I guess like the Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is like a good, you know, they're like, oh, whoever wanted to make a Quantumania movie, like a movie where like micro people punch each other in like the microbial universe because it has some, I don't know that story, but you know, thanks to Ant-Man and the Wasp, we can do that. We can go there. And I guess that sort of counts as a high concept. But if you were just like, okay, so there's a guy named John, and he opens up his vent to do some maintenance, and the vent swallows him, and he ends up in the quantum realm. And now he has to get, you know, people be like, yo, shut up, bro. Like, stop talking right now. Like, there's just no way you can pitch it, right?
Yeah, I think for that show, there were parts of it that mess with my like pedantic mind, like you were mentioning, like, oh, they're blind, but I think part of it was a story where everyone is blind really is probably not a TV show. Like you could write that book
for sure, right? Yeah,
really well, but TV is a visual medium, and so I think for me, like the way I like made an allowance for weirdness was things that people could feel or hear or sense that would be obvious to them in their like 300 years since everyone was blind are things that are translated into like a visual way for me. So like that, I think that happens a lot for me. Like to enjoy something, I have to like come up with a around justification. Like, oh, well, that's for my benefit as someone who can see. They're showing me that it's blue because actually what it is the fabric sounds different. But they can't have everything be gray fabric and then just be like, oh, by the way, they know that they're royal because it sounds different, or they know that he's a guard because it sounds different.
Yeah, the character goes, he's wearing a certain type of fabric. Yeah. It's silky.
They're like, you see, the Witchfinder.
Yeah, the Witchfinder.
The Witchfinder has like sticky clothes.
Yeah.
So like,
oh, yeah. And the characters are always whispering it to describe it to the audience. Oh, he's wearing silk. It must be purple. And the audience is like, oh, of course it's purple.
Yeah.
Because there was only one silk shipment that crashed 100 years ago. And it was from a purple ship.
That was the thing, like, no one would be dyeing fabric.
Yeah, right.
In a world where
you can't see stuff.
It's smelled a certain way, or I don't know. I kept trying to figure out like, how can I justify this?
Like that stuff is funny because it's those sorts of details. We talk about representation, It's those sort of details that like when, and curiously enough, a blind person can't look at C and be like, that doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah.
So they've escaped it in a weird way. But there's, yeah, without that feeling of authenticity, it's sort of like your brain kind of notices something. It's like for me, anytime, and it's because of my ears, it's just the sound. Like I will listen to like 0.2 seconds of dialogue in a film and I'll be like, why is this dubbed? Like why is this not the actual audio of the person that I'm looking at? Like that does not sound like they're in a coffee shop. Like that sounds like they're in a room and it's a dude who's looking at the screen. You know, like that stuff like always just breaks me out like immediately. Like even really good dubs, like I just can't, because like for my brain to look at it, like if I'm listening to it, it's fine. But if I look at it and see my man's like in a hallway and there's just no sound that sounds like he's in the hallway, I'm just like, what's going on? It's so weird. It's like something's wrong with this show. I don't know what it is though. Yeah, my goodness. So
well, I'm trying to sculpt this thing. I've got no plan. It's going nowhere.
It's resembling. That's all right. We don't have no plan for our show, at least, and it's going somewhere. I don't know where it's gone. We've been chatting, and I'm looking here in our little schedule right here, and I see some words. It's a compound word, or actually, it's the name of a country, and it's a place where you recently went and you just came back from, the Iceland trip. How was that?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So I went to Iceland, and it was super fun. Dude, that country is wild. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. I've been talking about it to all my family and everyone that can listen for like the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Now you gotta repeat it
it's
one more
cool
time.
there. I wasn't expecting too much, or like I didn't have that many expectations. I mean, it's winter. We were going to Iceland. I thought like there's a chance that the weather will be so crazy that we'll just sit inside. But in fact, we did a bunch of really fun stuff. Went to huge waterfalls and saw just like amazing landscape, and hung out in hot springs and hot pools because there's tons of geothermal activity, so there's like no shortage of hot water. So they had some like really cool spas set
That's
up.
crazy.
Yeah, so we had a ton
Geothermic.
of fun. Yeah, it was a terrific trip. I loved it. It was really fun to take some time off and be like
someplace,
far
yeah.
away from work with
So
my wife, who is also far away from work, and
yeah, and I
really
can
enjoying our
imagine
time.
almost everything you look at is something you don't recognize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. I was away for a while, but now I'm back, ready to try and figure out what to do. Mostly, I think, mostly work wise, I've got to get ready for Adepticon, and like
That's coming up. I think we're at like
all of my
38 days at the time of recording.
all my time spent like sorting figures and getting inventory ready was getting the Kickstarter stuff ready. And so now I'm way behind on keeping all the other stuff in stock. So I've got like a restock order on order, but with Adepticon coming, it'll be like kind of nail biting to see if it all arrives in time. Like, I mean, I've got a month, but it's stressful because that, they cast figures for multiple companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all trying to get inventory ready for Adepticon.
Oh yeah.
So it's super busy for them leading up to it, and hopefully it arrives in time because like Storms of Crawl is out of stock, and I could put some of the new figures up for sale, but then I'm worried I won't have anything for
Adepticon.
Adepticon.
Just show up with
Yeah.
just a table and a sign.
Yeah, I mean, this week is gonna be just digging through my garage and finding out exactly what I have of everything, and sorting everything, and then when the restock comes, it'll be sorting all that. So nothing really super exciting going on other than just being way behind on everything that needs to happen.
I feel it. Going back to Iceland though, did you actually see you didn't see an aurora borealis?
No.
Did you see the comet?
There was nope. I barely saw the sky.
Because like the clouds,
snowstorms all the time. Yeah,
just
it would break and there'd be like a sliver of blue every once in a while, but for the most part there was high clouds and low clouds and blasting ice, rain and fog and snow and yeah, hail. Yeah, so it was extreme and a lot of fun, but yeah, no, still my hunt for auroras has not yielded.
The borealis.
I kind of knew. I mean, like early, a week or so before checking the weather forecast, it was like,
yeah, talked about it.
It's going to be snowing and foggy or raining, and then it'll snow, and then it'll rain, and then it'll be windy. So my hope was the wind might blow some clearings, but nope.
Nope. You ended up throwing your coat away, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my old snowboarding jacket didn't cut it for Iceland.
No, what was going on? Was it just like
that water? It was too wet, and so like
the
my
rain.
coat was waterproof, but yeah, it just like it was rain and freezing rain, and then snow and hail, and so yeah, it just didn't work. I started like getting cold in my bones on the second day, and so I just threw it away and went bought a new coat.
Got a big thick one.
Yeah.
Did
that was cool though, because I got an Icelandic brand and it has like Icelandic wool.
Oh dang.
Line,
so. It's mad rated. It's coming from Iceland, in Iceland during the ice.
That, like crazy, yeah.
In the land. So it's like,
yeah, and it'll be good long term. I needed a new winter coat because I go to Canada every winter. Although it gets way colder in Alberta than in Iceland.
Really?
Yeah, because
that's weird Iceland's to my brain.
Like in the ocean, and so it's got like this big ocean keeping things like right around freezing and stuff. And sometimes they said like sometimes in the interior it'll get to like minus 20 Celsius, but in Alberta
that's minus Celsius is like a regular day.
Yeah, going to minus 40 sometimes when I'm up there. So
jeez. What is minus 40 in Fahrenheit?
It's minus 40.
Oh,
that's actually where they meet.
Oh dang.
Yeah, it's cold.
I literally am trying to imagine. I just don't know.
Yeah, it's intense. Like your eyeballs feel like they're freezing. If you taking breaths, you're like feel like ice is getting into your lungs. So you got to take like shallow breaths and stuff.
Oh, whoa.
I mean, I never have to work in it. I'm just like cruising around.
I know that makes me think of like outside. That does make me think of people that do like work out there. They probably got some like crazy endurances on the inside of their bodies for that temperature.
Yeah, they
I'll see a little bit about it here. Because like I remember I was driving back from the gym. I think it was in December. I remember it was kind of like an ugly night. One of those like really just dark, snowy, rainy. And I'm driving back from the gym. It's maybe like approaching 1. And before I got to the gym, I saw this dude who was jogging. And he was just wearing like jogging shorts. And I was like, all right, bro. Like, that's fine. Whatever. And then I pull into the gym, do the thing, pull out, drive. And then I see my man. I'm like, damn, bro. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you still out here running? And then whatever. Driving off. Go over the thing. Over this big hill. And then I like notice, because again, it's dark, like out of the side, dude running on the side of the street, a different guy, same damn thing. And I was like, what's up with people running in the shorts right now? It's 1 a.m. Like, go to sleep. Go to sleep. And you're going to catch a cold. I'm feeling cold, man. But I don't know. There's always that guy. You cold and there's the dude who's just wearing the shorts out in the 30-degree weather. And you're like, all right, bro.
We had, I mean, like, in Iceland, we had we got outside, every day playing. There's so much cool stuff to see. Um,
Did
yeah,
what kind of activities did you do? Like,
well, there's like lots of sightseeing to do. So we visited like cool historical sites. The Thingvellir
the
is
Thingvellir.
A special site of historical significance in Iceland where they held like kind of like parliament for in the medieval period. The early settlers back in like 900s would gather there for 2 weeks every summer to have the law speaker recite all of the laws, and they
Just
come up with new laws or come up with new things, vote on stuff.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was like a really cool site, and also it's where the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates are pulling apart. So it's a very interesting like historical site and geologic site, and um, so we got to see that and see some amazing waterfalls.
I remember seeing
Eat
that
at some
story.
cool restaurants. Go down to the coast, south coast, and explore some more like interesting geologic places. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a terrific time.
How was the flight?
Very laid back. Oh yeah, I mean, it's like an 8-hour flight from Seattle to Iceland, and so I played a ton of Hades.
8-hour flight from
Yeah.
Seattle to Iceland. That's crazy.
Yeah, and then another 2 hours from San Francisco to Seattle. So it was a long day of travel each way, but we got through it. I've been jet lagged. I'm feeling mostly normal today, but I've been struggling with jet lag these last couple days. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never traveled far enough to encounter jet lag. It'll be interesting.
Oh, well. Yeah, it's weird being super jet lagged, but like you have sort of like sluggish out of body tiredness.
That's just me. I guess I do have jet lag, but it's just like me just being my normal ass self. Like, oh yeah. God, I gotta do these things. Gotta do them. So with the sculpting,
yeah.
What I mean, I see you looking at the screen.
It's terrible. This is going nowhere. Yeah, I should have done some sketches ahead of time to try and figure out like what I had in mind. But
you're kind of doing. You're just doing like a 3D sculpt sketch now, I guess.
Not even. I'm just wasting time. I should just.
No, that doesn't even work like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too much, bro. That's too much.
Yeah. In fact, I think this is. At least I opened it, but I'm not.
We got to. That's the only way that it happens. You know, I've been talking to a friend about game design stuff and like. I don't know, like how it works. Like, oh, how do you design? And it's just like, it's not a straightforward process, really. There's like all these different things that can go into it, and sometimes you'll do a whole bunch of stuff, and you'll be like, cool, yeah, that's not the thing I want to do. I actually don't. Yeah. I don't want that.
And I'm in general, I'm able to most of the time I can wait for inspiration to hit, and because like work is a lot easier and a lot more fun when I'm like having
feeling that passion
in my mind.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, if I'm not ready with an idea, like there's so much other admin stuff to do that
it kind of like that you could just interact with all that stuff.
Well, then I can still be busy and doing important Relic Blade work, because like a lot of stuff on relicblade.com is out of stock right now. And so there's a lot of work that needs to go into getting everything back in stock.
I believe it. I got a taste myself with the old.
Yeah, it's nonstop. But I mean, because you want to sell stuff, you want to stay active and stay productive and be able to make money. But at the same time, like I'm spread so thin. I've got to find someone local that can help me sort stuff.
Yeah, so if you're a local and you know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people volunteer to help me sometimes, but it's just like, I've got
Yeah, you
quite
need
a
a
lot going on.
special person who's got the unique availability and mixture of attention to detail to doing repetitive tasks.
Yeah, and familiarity with the product, because you end up
yeah,
like, for someone that isn't totally familiar, like, who's supposed to know the difference between a poacher and a slaver? It's like,
exactly.
well, one has a spear.
Well, you see,
Never mind. I'll do it.
yeah. So I've had that question asked me like several times. Like my pops has asked me, I've had my brother ask me if if like my nephew could help, and a couple of friends have asked if they can like help me with painting stuff. Like, oh, if is there some part of the process that it's always just like, no, not really, because you got to learn. Like, I mean, what you're asking is, can I teach you how to do something and then you can do it? And it's like, that can happen. But I'm like, that's not going to be like you helping me. That's going to be like me and you hanging out for 3 weeks while you learn a new skill. It's like, it doesn't work like that. Like, it's not as simple as this thing, you do this or do that. There's a little bit more that goes into it. And it's not necessarily because it's just a mechanical thing. It's like, it is a literal, like, my preference, my weird habits and the way that I think should be done, all that stuff on top of it as well. Like, oh, if you want to learn how to do it my way, cool, be like this, because then otherwise you'd be like, actually I should just do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it better.
True.
I'm gonna do it. All right, Sean, we've been chatting. We managed to chat for a long time this time.
Oh yes, shoot, and we didn't even cover some of the topics, or like 2 topics that we were gonna.
Well, we kind of did. We sort of did, because the only one we didn't talk about was demonship. But that's, y'all can.
We'll talk about that, and I think for the next episode, we'll come in with some like more good stuff.
We've got some sketches.
Able to finish, make some more, get some sketches.
Yeah, because we were just chatting about kind of having this space, this time to, why don't you fire up the sculpting thing, get some sculpting done, And so this was the very first time trying that idea, and we just learned that you just can't just turn it on to sculpt. It's more.
Yeah, sometimes you can, but it's better if you have a plan.
yeah, for sure. So, having a plan is, I think G.I. Joe says that planning is half the battle, and now you know. All right, y'all. Real G.I. Joe quotes. I will catch you guys next time. Relicbuds out. Much love and peace.